America, I'm Hugh Hewitt. Chairman Mike Gallagher is the chair of the China Select Committee, the Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party. He is from Wisconsin. Good morning, Chairman Gallagher. How are you?
I'm fantastic, Hugh. Great to be with you.
I learned this week that Dusty Johnson is on the Select Committee, and this gives me great comfort. He's from South Dakota, so he has got some common sense opposed to the people from Wisconsin. But maybe you will put him in charge of finding about the farmland issue because this has come to my attention and it greatly disturbs me that Chinese companies are buying up American farmland. Is that correct?
That is correct. And both him and Representative Newhouse have a keen interest in this issue, so I intend to let them take the lead. What's interesting about this is theoretically, when we reformed the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States approximately 4 years ago through a piece of legislation called FIRMA. I know I'm using an acronym and violating our rule here, Hugh, but
You
Foreign
threw the flag on yourself, so that's okay.
Foreign Investment Risk Review Modernization Act. Sorry, it's a bit of a mouthful. Theoretically, we gave CFIUS the ability to review land purchases like this. Now, right now, it seems the regulations, the implementing regulations written by the executive branch, were written in such a way where the view of Treasury, at least, is that they don't have the authority to do that. But that was congressional intent. So one thing we may do is either try and prohibit the purchase of land by an entity that is linked to the Chinese Communist Party or a hostile foreign power, or simply clarify the implementing regulations to give CFIUS the ability to block such transactions. The other thing we're seeing, Hugh, is some action at the state level. Governor DeSantis, I believe, has launched a review of this issue, but it's generated a lot of concern, and it's not just in the Dakotas. It's in Florida. It's a small percentage of the overall land in the United States, something like 1%. But if that 1% is located next to a sensitive nuclear facility or a military base, I think it should concern all of us.
Well, I don't want the CCP owning any land in the United States. I'm kind of, this is not a difficult issue for me. Why would we let the Chinese Communist Party own land in the United States? It just doesn't make any sense to me. Let me move to the second question about the Select Committee, the Gallagher Committee. Have the Democrats named their ranking member and their members yet?
No, Hugh, they have not. And I don't know how many Democrat listeners you have, but if there's any way you could galvanize the hordes of Hewitt enthusiasts to tell Leader Jeffries to appoint a ranking member in Democrats, I would greatly appreciate it because we can't do anything until we have a committee. We need to pass, for example, if we want to do a hearing, let's say we wanted to do our first hearing at the beginning of March. That seems like a long way away. We're out of session for half of February. I need to get an agreement with the Democrats on rules instantiating the committee prior to us being able to have a hearing. I have a series of things I want to do in a bipartisan fashion with the ranking member prior to that. But until they appoint members of the committee, we can't do anything. And I just, again, for any of my Democratic colleagues who maybe voted against the committee's creation or are concerned that this is going to be a Republican-only effort, the Speaker has made it clear. Speaker McCarthy has made it clear that he wants this to be a bipartisan effort. And I intend to carry out his intention in terms of how I conduct myself and how I conduct the committee. So I think this is actually going to be a very productive place to work over the next 2 years. So I am hoping that today we get some Democrats appointed.
Have you talked to Hakeem Jeffries, the leader of the minority party in the House, about why he is? It may be that everybody wants on. It may be that he is balancing appointments on the Jordan subcommittee as well. There might be a lot of reasons, but has he talked to you about it?
I actually talked to him in passing on the House floor, and I know that he and the Speaker have talked about making sure this is a serious effort. I think he's going to appoint serious people, by at least from what I've heard about that conversation. And he told me yesterday that he thinks this will all be resolved soon. But the select committees are getting populated last. I think that's driving a lot of this, and he's probably trying to balance who do I put on the weaponization of government committee, who do I put on the intelligence committee, who do I put on the China committee, and how do I kind of balance all these things and the competing demands of various members. So again, I'm hoping that we get members appointed today so we can get down to business because we're already kind of getting pushed a little bit to the right here.
Now, Congressman, I want this portion to be very, very serious, very straightforward. I had dinner on Saturday night with an old and dear friend, one of the most talented teachers in California's public schools that I have ever known, and I've been out here most of the last 40 years. A genuine professional, loves his kids. He has TikTok on his phone. And I looked at him like, are you nuts? He said, well, everybody has TikTok. What's the problem? I tried to explain to him, would you, Chairman Mike Gallagher, explain why people need to get TikTok off their phone?
The issue, in my mind, is simple. TikTok is owned by a Chinese company, ByteDance. ByteDance is beholden to the Chinese Communist Party. They have basically a controlling interest on ByteDance's board. The head of ByteDance has vowed to make sure that all product lines follow appropriate political control. So you have to ask yourself, do you want an app that is effectively controlled by the Chinese Communist Party to be in your phone, not only tracking your browsing history, but tracking your location, which gets to the second issue. When asked basic questions about whether and how they were using certain features of the app, such as the ability to track the location of the users, TikTok executives denied that they had, while subsequent reporting revealed that they were lying, which leads to the third issue. When asked simple questions on TV by Jake Tapper, high-level TikTok policy officials, Tapper asked them, is there a genocide in China right now? And they hemmed and they hawed and they would not answer the question, which I think proves point one, which is that because they're effectively controlled by the Chinese Communist Party, they're afraid of angering the Chinese Communist Party. We cannot let the CCP control the most powerful media company in America. As I believe I've said on your show before, it would be as if, to evince a period in which you were alive, but I was not, Hugh, in 1958, we would have allowed the KGB and Pravda to buy the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Chicago Tribune, and that probably understates the scope of the threat that we're facing here. So, and to say nothing of all the issues of how it's highly addictive, how it's intensifying anxiety, depression, and suicidal ideation among young women in particular. I think FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr hit the mark when he called it digital fentanyl because it's both dangerous and addictive, and it ultimately can be traced back to China.
So, Chairman Gallagher, I said to him in response to what harm could it do is the question that you get. What harm could it do? It's an app. I said it's an artificial intelligence exploitable database that may never be used, but it's also never going to be erased. So they know everywhere that you've been, every image over which you've lingered, everything you found amusing. Moreover, your children will be building a digital database on themselves that they're going to handle to the Chinese Communist Party, and it will be accessible forever. And it's not that they're being surveilled, though they are. It's that they are being predicted. Their behavior will be predictable, and the algorithm in the sky, combined with artificial intelligence and supercomputing, will feed to them exactly the trigger points that will push their behavior or in some other way influence their choices. Is that overstatement or understatement?
No, I think that hits the mark. I mean, they're being propagandized, right? For young Americans, TikTok is not just a forum for dumb dance videos. It's a way in which young Americans get their news. So if you have an opaque algorithm that feeds you news based on what is convenient for the Chinese Communist Party, that's just a recipe for propagandizing America's youth. So that's another concern. I think it's bound up, what you sort of lay out there with surveillance and the ability to sort of create dossiers effectively on every American. It's bound up in this bigger issue, which is what type of model for governance is the Chinese Communist Party trying to perfect and potentially export? And it is one of total control, leveraging technology. It's Orwell on steroids. It probably would make, Orwell's 1984 blush by comparison. And increasingly, they believe because of that, and because of the ability to leverage technology, they can succeed where the Soviet Union failed in engineering souls, as they call the effort. And so it's bound up in that broader project, which I believe presents an existential threat to the American project, which is one of self-government founded on liberty and freedom. So it's not just about an app in your phone.
If it was possible to hold a hearing with your Democratic colleagues, will you devote a hearing just to TikTok? Because it seems to me that when very responsible teachers are not aware of the threat posed by TikTok, then lots of Americans aren't, or they're churning it out, or they're saying, what's the big deal? I'm on Twitter a lot. And it's just so completely different. Will you be devoting a hearing to TikTok?
I think we will. One thing to flag, Kathy McMorris-Rogers on the Energy and Commerce Committee is actually going to have TikTok's CEO before her committee. Basically, any legislation on TikTok. So I have the bipartisan bill to ban TikTok. It's referred to the House Foreign Affairs Committee, but Energy and Commerce also has a piece of this jurisdiction. So we just need to make sure that ENC and Foreign Affairs and the Select Committee on China are all on the same page in terms of both hearing oversight as well as moving forward on legislation. And so one option would be for us to partner with ENC and with Foreign Affairs on a joint hearing, or after they do their hearing or around the same time. One thing I've been thinking through is we can have a hearing devoted to TikTok, but tease out some of these bigger issues at play, right? So for example, in my opinion, it's not just enough to ban TikTok or force a sale. You also need to have a bigger proactive strategy for how we share data across borders with free world countries that we actually trust. Shinzo Abe gave a great speech before he was killed, where he laid out this model of data free flow with trust. So I think we can do two things: identify and expose the threat posed by TikTok, or really any app controlled by a hostile foreign power, while at the same time laying out a strategy for cross-border data flows throughout the free world that actually makes sense.
Well, and what I really want is mom and dad and teacher to understand that the CCP is ubiquitous and they are evil. And that requires the Democrats name their committee. So when you come back next week, you think you'll have a committee named?
Hope springs eternal in the human breast, Hugh.
When you come back next week, will Aaron Rodgers be a Jet?
Great changes are afoot, both in Congress and at Lambeau Field. So we could have a lot of news to make next week, Hugh.
I'm just wondering, are you one of the get rid of Aaron people?
Aaron's a legend. If he wants to play for the Packers next year, he will play for the Packers next year. If he wants
Why
to
do
leave,
all the Packers quarterbacks leave at the end? That never happens. I mean, they get hurt in the Browns land, but they don't want to leave their team. Bernie Kosar is still with the Browns. Why do your Packers people want to get out of town?
it's just part of the hero's journey. And then they come back and, we retire their numbers and we all hug and sing Kumbaya. It happened with Brett Favre. It'll happen with Rodgers.
Oh, Mike Gallagher, Chairman Gallagher. That's what I have to call you now. He sent me a memo last week, America. He said, please refer to me as Chairman Gallagher. Good to see you. I'll be right back, America. Stay tuned.